Hi guys, tonight we are going somewhere that feels less like a journey and more like a return. Not a return to a specific place you have been before, but a return to something older than memory. A feeling that lives in the body before the mind has time to name it. The quiet that comes when you step inside and something in you releases. The particular weight of settling down in a space that belongs to you, that holds the traces of your presence even when you've been away. That is what this is about tonight. Home, not as a structure, not as walls or roof or threshold, but as something you feel in the chest before you've even looked around. A recognition. A familiarity that goes deeper than thought. Wherever you are as you listen, if you enjoy this kind of quiet storytelling, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And if you genuinely like it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where these quiet moments find people. For now, let yourself settle. Let your body understand that there's nowhere else to be. What follows is long and slow, and it will take care of you. Close your eyes if you like. You have been walking for most of the day, not running, not searching urgently, just moving the way people move when they have covered ground before and know how to pace themselves across it. Your feet understand the terrain in a way that doesn't require you to think much. They find the softer ground along the edge of the path. They know where the roots are. The light is changing now. It has been changing for a while, that slow shift from the clear brightness of mid-afternoon toward something warmer, more amber, more slanted. Shadows lengthen. The ground ahead of you glows faintly where the light strikes it at this angle. Trees cast long shapes across the earth. You are tired, but it's a clean kind of tired. The kind that comes from movement and air and hours spent simply being in the world. Your legs carry it. Your shoulders carry it. There's a faint ache behind your eyes that isn't pain, just the body's way of accounting for the day. And then, without quite deciding to, you pause. You can smell it. Before you can see it, before the tree's thin enough to give you a proper view, you can smell the smoke. It is faint at first, the kind of thing you might dismiss if you weren't paying attention. But you are paying attention. You have been paying attention since before you can remember. The way people learn to when the world asks it of them. And this smell, this particular combination of wood smoke and earth, and something you could not describe if you tried this smell, means one thing. You are almost home. The trees open. Not dramatically. There is no dramatic opening. It is simply that the woods thin at a certain point, the way they do in places where people have been coming and going long enough to open up the ground and widen the paths. The undergrowth retreats from the edge of the clearing. Light falls more openly here. And there, set back from the open ground, half sheltered by the rock and by the old thick stand of trees behind it, is the shelter. You stand for a moment at the edge of the clearing. The fire is low inside. You can see the glow of it through the entrance, faint orange and amber spilling across the ground in front of the opening. There is a thin column of smoke rising from the smoke hole at the top and curling slowly upward into the pale sky. One or two things have been left outside: a rolled piece of hide leaning against the rock face, a flat stone that has served as a working surface for as long as you can remember, worn smooth and slightly blackened at one edge from years of use. Nothing remarkable. Nothing you would have described as beautiful, if description were something you bothered with. But it is yours. It is known. Something in your chest settles. You cross the clearing. The ground here is familiar in the way that only ground you have crossed many times can be. You know without thinking where it dips slightly near the old route, where it firms up again just before the entrance. Your feet have memorized it. This path exists partly because of you, because of the dozens, the hundreds of times you have walked it in both directions, setting out and returning, and the dozens of people who walked it before you and will walk it again. Research suggests early humans returned repeatedly to particular shelters and camps over many seasons and possibly across generations, building up what might be described as a sense of place through repeated use and presence. Not ownership, something quieter than that. A mutual belonging. You don't think in those terms. You don't need to. You just know that this is yours the way that your own hands are yours. Not because you built it, though you helped. Not because no one else comes here, because others do. But because the time you have spent here is written into the ground and the walls and the air itself, in some way that you feel without being able to explain. You duck under the low lintel, and inside, the air changes. It is warmer, that is the first thing. Not dramatically warmer, not the kind of warmth that surprises you, but a warmth that feels right, that feels expected. The fire has been burning at low heat for hours, and the walls have absorbed some of it, and the ground has absorbed some of it, and the air holds it still. You breathe it in without ceremony. It is just the air in here. The smoke is present but not heavy. There is a particular art to keeping a fire so that the smoke rises the way it should, so that the space stays breathable and warm without filling with haze. Someone has tended it well today. You move to the fire and crouch beside it. You don't need to rebuild it. It only needs a few pieces of wood, some smaller and some larger, placed with care rather than haste. You know where the wood is kept without looking in the dry pile to your right, the pieces stacked against the wall in the order that makes them easiest to reach. Someone laid them there. Someone always keeps the dry pile stocked. You place 3 pieces, 2 small, 1 large across the top. Then you sit back and wait and watch the fire accept them. This is one of the things about a home that takes time to understand. It is not just the presence of shelter. Temporary camps have shelter. What makes a place different is the accumulation of small habits. The woodpile stacked the same way each time. The flat stone in the same position near the entrance. The sleeping hides laid out on the same side, in the arrangement that works for the number of people who sleep here. You didn't decide any of this consciously. No one did. It came about through repetition and small adjustments until everything settled into its place. Now you can move through this space in near darkness and not bump into anything, because you know where everything is the way you know where your own teeth are. The fire picks up. You watch the flame find the edge of the larger piece of wood and begin to move along the grain of it. There is a particular pleasure in this, in watching fire do what fire does, in the way it is both predictable and still somehow worth watching. Somewhere outside a bird calls. Something shifts in the undergrowth. Then quiet again. You set down what you've been carrying, not hastily. You find the corner of the space where your things go, not because anyone assigned it, but because over time each person in this shelter has found their particular corner, their particular arrangement, and you settle your load there. You take a moment to organize it without real thought. Things that need to dry are near the fire's warmth. Things that need to stay dry are away from the entrance where the air comes in cold and sometimes damp. This act of setting things in order is itself a small comfort. You have carried this weight all day, and now you put it down, and the putting down is not just physical. There is a releasing that happens. The body knows it has arrived. You stretch your fingers where they cramped from carrying, opening and closing your hand slowly. Look at the faint line on your palm left by the strap. Run your thumb across it. Then leave it. The fire has settled into a steady burn now. The larger piece is lit, and the heat is beginning to build. You can feel it on the left side of your face where you are turned toward it. The smell in here is layered. You are not consciously cataloging it, but if you were, you would find smoke first always smoke, the base note of this place. Under that, something earthy and animal. The smell of the hides on the sleeping area. The smell of the ground itself, packed and slightly warm. Something faintly resinous from the wood. And underneath all of it, something harder to name, something like use. The accumulated smell of days and seasons spent here, of meals prepared and eaten, of wet weather and dry weather, of sleeping bodies and morning air. It is not a clean smell. But it is not an unpleasant one either. It is simply the smell of this particular place, and your body accepts it without comment the way it accepts the smell of your own skin. It is the smell that tells you, before your eyes have fully adjusted to the dimmer light, that you are exactly where you should be. The light outside is still warm but falling. You know this without needing to look. The angle of the light that comes through the entrance, the quality of it against the ground inside, the temperature of the air that moves in occasionally, all of these tell you where the sun is the way a map might tell someone else. You have read this light in this place across many seasons, and it is as readable as anything you have ever learned. There is still time before full dark. Enough time to do what needs doing without rushing. You take a skin container and step outside briefly to fill it from the nearby stream. The stream is not far, close enough to hear from the shelter entrance if it is quiet enough. You know the path to it without thinking. You know the particular shallow spot where the footing is safe where the water runs clear over pale stone, where you can fill a container without wading in. You do this and come back, inside again. The shift in temperature is small but real. Inside is warmer, your body notes it. Early humans likely returned to the same water sources repeatedly, learning their rhythms, their safety, their seasonal changes. A reliable water source was one of the features that made a campsite into a place worth returning to again and again, not just shelter, but proximity to the things shelter required. You don't think of it in those terms. You think of it more simply as the stream is there. It is always there. It is part of this place. Back inside, you set the container near the fire where the water will stay warm. You add a few smooth stones to the fire's edge, heating them. This too is habit. The stones will go in later when the water needs warming or when the night air requires more heat in the sleeping area. You have done this many times. The stones know their role. The light at the entrance shifts. Warmer, the moment of late afternoon pressing toward evening. Someone will come soon. Others who spent the day elsewhere moving through the landscape on different paths. Returning to this same point the way water finds its level. Not because they arranged a time, the concept of arrangement is too precise for this, but because this is simply where the day ends. This is where it has always ended. You feel their coming before you hear it. Or perhaps you hear it before you know you heard a change in the sounds outside, the way the birds adjust their calls when people move through a space. Then, feet on the familiar ground outside. The soft sound of weight shifting, of something being set down just outside the entrance. And then they are inside. There is no particular ceremony to this. Arrivals here are not greeted with great fuss. There is a glance. Something in the posture that conveys, you are here. A brief movement of recognition that passes between people who spend so much time together that language is often unnecessary. You make a small gesture toward the water. The gesture means I feel it. The response is minimal, a slight inclination of the head. And then they settle into their own part of the space, and the shelter holds both of you, and it is different and better for it. There is something specific about the way a home feels when it is shared. A shelter with one person in it is a refuge. It is protection, warmth, quiet. But a shelter with two people in it is different, and a shelter with more is different still. The warmth is not just from the fire. There is the warmth of nearness, of other bodies, of the knowledge that in the dark of the night you will not be alone. This has probably always mattered. The relief of it is not something you would articulate, because articulation is not the kind of thing that happens here, but it is real. To come home is partly to come back to people, to the sounds of another person moving nearby, breathing, settling in, to the soft evidence of others having been here all day while you were elsewhere. You notice these small signs. The arrangement of things slightly different from how you left them this morning. The fire tended, meaning someone was here with enough attention to keep it. A bundle of something near the back wall that wasn't there before, plant matter, herb-like, gathered and brought back. Evidence others were here today. This, too, is home. The evening builds slowly. More people arrive across the next while, not all at once, but in ones and twos, in the way that a shared space fills without hurry. Each arrival brings a small shift in the shelter's atmosphere, more warmth, more sound, more presence. The fire is fed again. Someone has brought food back, and there is the quiet activity of preparation near the fire. You are not the one preparing tonight. You are sitting against the wall on your sleeping hide, your legs stretched out in front of you, watching the fire and the activity around it without needing to participate. This is allowed. There is no requirement to be useful at every moment. The evening distributes its tasks naturally, and sometimes your task is simply to be present, to rest. The cooking smell fills the space, something roasted, something charred at the edges, warm and fatty and good. Your body responds to it before your mind does, the stomach contracting slightly, a surge of saliva. You haven't eaten since midday, and the smell is a direct, simple thing. Your body knows what it wants. You sit with that wanting without urgency. There is something to be said for the simplicity of this kind of hunger. Not complicated hunger. Not the kind that loops and circles and becomes something else. Just the plain, physical fact of a body that has worked all day and is ready to eat. It is a good feeling, in its way. A clean feeling. You are tired and hungry and warm and surrounded by people, and outside it is getting dark, and inside the fire is bright. There is nothing about this moment that needs to be other than what it is. Food is passed and eaten without ceremony. Not silently, there are sounds, the sounds of eating, of people near each other, of occasional soft exchanges of something that functions like communication, but without the kind of structured conversation that fills modern meals. More like the comfortable sound of a group of people who have been together long enough that silence between them is ordinary and fine. You eat slowly. The food is good. Warm in your hands, warm in your mouth, warm going down. Each mouthful is a thing in itself rather than a step toward something. You eat the way someone eats when food is simply food, without distraction, without overlay. The fire settles. After eating, there is a long, quiet stretch. The evening presses in at the entrance. You can see the deep blue of the sky beyond it, holding its last light at the edge before the dark takes over fully. Inside, the fire makes everything amber and close. The walls of the shelter rough stone in some places, packed earth and wood in others glow with the light in a way that makes them look almost soft. Someone has added more wood. The fire is comfortable now. Not roaring, not diminishing, just present. Steady, your eyes move slowly around the space, not looking for anything, just moving the way eyes do in the firelight, following the light's movement across surfaces. The wall opposite where you sit has marks on it, faint and old. You don't always notice them, but tonight you do. Marks left by hands. Marks left by a sharp stone tracing a line across the face of the rock many seasons ago, or many years ago, by someone you never knew who lived here before you. They are not elaborate, just marks, but they are there. Evidence of presence long before yours. Research suggests that repeated human occupation of particular shelters and rock formations over long periods was common in early human prehistory. The same sites were returned to across generations, not always because they were the best available, but because they were known, because they held something that functioned like memory even when the individuals who formed those memories were long gone. You trace one of the lines with your eye, but don't touch it. You never touch it. Neither does anyone else. It exists there the way old things exist as itself, without explanation. The dark outside is complete now. The entrance to the shelter is just dark, a rectangle of nothing. The sounds from outside are night sounds, now insects, the occasional call of something in the trees. The silence between sounds that is itself a texture, a presence. Inside, the fire makes the darkness irrelevant. You exist within a circle of light and warmth and people, and what is outside the circle is simply outside. You have never been afraid of the dark in itself, but you have understood its edges. There is a difference between the dark outside on a night when everything is as it should be, and the dark outside when something is moving in it. You know that difference in your body the way you know the difference between a sound that is ordinary and a sound that is not. Tonight the sounds are ordinary. You lie back. Not all the way down yet, not fully stretched out for sleep, but leaning, your weight shifting toward the sleeping hide, your body beginning its slow negotiation with the ground and the warmth. Your eyes stay open, but loosely. The ceiling of the shelter, the underside of the branches and bark that have been laid and packed to keep the weather out, is dark above you. The firelight plays on it in slow, shifting patterns. This is something that never quite becomes ordinary, lying in a sheltered space, watching firelight move. Not that you watch it with any particular intention. It is more that your eyes find it without deciding to, the way water finds a slope. Firelight moves constantly, and in movement it catches attention without demanding it. It is one of the oldest entertainments. Long before anything that might be called culture or art or story, there was fire, and the watching of fire. You have watched it in this shelter on many evenings. You have watched it on nights when you were alone here, and on nights crowded with people, and on nights when someone was sick and needed tending, and on nights when the weather outside pressed against the shelter so hard you could hear it trying to find a way in. Fire was always there in some form, providing the thing that made the shelter feel like more than just protection. Early humans may have used fire for at least 300,000 years, and some evidence suggests controlled use of fire even earlier. The effect of fire on social behavior, bringing groups together, extending the day beyond the natural limit of daylight, providing warmth that allowed people to rest together, may have fundamentally shaped the way early humans lived in groups and formed attachments to particular places. You don't know any of that. You just know that this fire, in this place, at this time of the evening, is exactly what the evening is supposed to feel like. Someone on the other side of the fire is already asleep. You can hear it in the change in their breathing, the slightly deeper, slower rhythm, the absence of the small movements that people make when they are still awake. Their shape in the firelight is still. You glance at them briefly, just to check. A person sleeping is usually a person safe, and something in you registers that calmly. Another person is not asleep yet, sitting closer to the fire, feeding it very small pieces at intervals, keeping it where they want it. They do this the way someone does when they have done it many times without looking at what their hands are doing, their attention somewhere loose and interior, maintaining the fire on some level of habit while their mind is elsewhere or nowhere. You lie a little further down. The ground is not soft. It is never quite soft. But the hide beneath you has been used enough times that it has shaped itself slightly to the human form. It accepts your weight without surprise. There is the smell of smoke and earth and sleep warmth, the sounds of breathing, more than one set now overlapping slightly. The shift and settle of the fire. Outside, nothing alarming. The night doing its ordinary night things. Your body is taking stock. Legs, tired but eased now, the ache of walking settling into something more diffuse, less focused. Feet, warm, freed from whatever covered them through the day. Shoulders, releasing. There is something specific about the releasing of shoulders that have been held in effort all day. It happens in stages. Not all at once, a gradual letting go. Your hands are open on the hide beside you. Palms up. This position on the ground in a warm space with others nearby, fire present, is one of the oldest positions a human body can find itself in. Not metaphorically old. Old in the most literal sense. There are very probably traces of this exact configuration going back hundreds of thousands of years. People lying down in sheltered spaces, near fire, near each other, at the end of a day of movement and effort, releasing, your body knows this position. Not in any mystical sense. Just in the way that bodies, after enough repetitions of something, begin to respond automatically. You lie down in this space, in this warmth, and something shifts. Not something you do. Something that happens to you. You are more relaxed than you were a moment ago. The fire settles lower. The person who was tending it has lain down too now. The fire is at a good level for the night, enough wood to hold for some hours, enough warmth to carry the sleeping space through till morning, but not so much that it burns too hot or requires constant attention. This is a kind of knowledge that lives in the hands and the eyes rather than anywhere else. You learn it by doing it, and then it is simply something you know. Outside, the temperature is falling. You can feel the change in the air that moves in through the smoke hole and occasionally around the entrance. The shelter holds against it. Not perfectly, this is not a perfectly sealed space, and you would not want it to be, but enough. The warmth inside is distinctly inside. The cold outside is distinctly outside. This gap between the two, this small insulation of warmth held inside a rough and imperfect shell, is the whole achievement of home. You have moved toward the center of the sleeping area on the hide, an unconscious adjustment, closer to the others, closer to the shared warmth of sleeping bodies, which is a warmth more dependable over a long night than any fire that will eventually need tending. You don't think about this. Your body simply angles toward the heat. There is a pause of some kind in the evening's gradual shift toward sleep. Not a pause caused by anything. No sound from outside. No discomfort. Just a moment of awareness. A brief surfacing. You are awake, and you know you are awake, and you look at the ceiling of the shelter dark, patterned with slow-moving firelight, and you do not think much. There is the shape of the day in your memory, not in images exactly, not in something that clear. More in textures and feelings, the ground underfoot in the morning, the quality of the air at midday. The place you stopped to rest and drank water and looked across a stretch of open ground at nothing in particular. The weight of what you carried. The smell of the shelter as you came back to it. It was a day. Not exceptional, not terrible, just a day. A day that is now finished and resting in the shelter of this night. You close your eyes, not sleeping yet, just resting your eyes. The sounds continue. The fire, still present, talking quietly to itself. The breathing around you, outside the ordinary dark. Your thoughts are not really thoughts, not sentences, not structured reflection. They are more like the residue of the day, small images and feelings that rise briefly and then settle. The shape of a tree you noticed this morning and then stopped noticing because the act of noticing it was enough. The particular coolness of the water at the stream, the way the stones felt underfoot in the shallow crossing, the warmth of the fire when you first came in. Nothing troubles you. Not because your life is without trouble, it isn't, and there will be other days, other seasons, with their particular difficulties, but because in this moment, in this specific space, there is nothing urgent and nowhere to be, and the warmth is present and the people are near. This is the full meaning of rest, not just the absence of effort, but the presence of everything that makes effort unnecessary for a while. The fire is lower now. You don't need to open your eyes to know this. You can feel it in the temperature of the air against your face, which has cooled very slightly. You can hear it in the sound of the fire itself, which has settled from a gentle crackling to something quieter, more occasional. There is still warmth. There will be warmth until morning. But the fire is doing what fires do when left to themselves, drawing down toward coals. The coals will last. They are the deep heart of the fire, the part that keeps going long after the visible flames have diminished. In the morning, someone will find them, still warm under a fine layer of ash, and feed them, and the fire will come back. It almost always comes back, if you tend it with care. This, too, is part of the pattern of home. The fire goes out and comes back. People leave and return. The day ends and begins again. Nothing about this is remarkable or requires comment. It simply is the pattern, the rhythm that makes a place feel like it has continuity, like it has some kind of permanence even in its obvious impermanence. You are drifting, not asleep, but at the edge of it, the way you stand at the edge of a river before crossing. The other side is there. You just haven't stepped in yet. There is a moment on most nights when the body simply decides. It is not a decision you make. It is more accurate to say that your body makes it without consulting you, that some threshold of warmth and quiet and physical ease is crossed, and the thing that has been holding you slightly above sleep simply lets go. Tonight is that kind of night. The crossing happens gradually. The sounds around you remain the same, and then they are somehow further away, not louder or softer, but more like sounds heard from a greater distance. The feeling of the ground beneath you becomes more abstract, present but not detailed. Your thoughts, already not quite thoughts, become less, not nothing, not the absence of experience, just less. In the morning, you will wake in this same place. You will feel the hard ground first, the familiar ache of it in your hip and shoulder. You will hear the fire, or the remnants of it. You will smell the air smoke and warmth and a particular morning quality of cooled stone. The light will be coming in at the entrance at a low angle, the early pale light of the first hour. You will get up slowly, the way everyone does. Move to the fire first. Feed it. Watch it come back. These are the first acts of the day in the same order they are always done. Not because anyone insisted, just because the order that works repeats itself until it becomes the only order that feels right. This is one of the ways a home builds itself. Act by act, morning by morning, the same things done in the same rough sequence until the sequence is no longer something you think about. It is simply what you do. And in doing it, you belong to this place, and this place belongs to you, in a way that doesn't require ownership or naming. But that is the morning. For now, sleep. The shelter is quiet, not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind that feels full. Full of sleeping people, of held warmth, of the slow work of a fire doing what it does without anyone watching. Full of the ordinary night outside, which is also doing what it does, cooling, settling, cycling through its dark hours and the animals in it, and the land beneath all of it, patient and unchanging. You are one small warmth in that large dark, sheltered, at rest. You sleep. And the night passes the way nights do in places like this, not in a single unbroken span, but in layered depths. There are moments closer to the surface, where a sound from outside or a shift in the temperature pulls you up briefly, and you listen with most of you still asleep, and hear nothing urgent and go back down. This is perhaps the most ancient form of sleep. Not the modern kind, unbroken in total silence and total dark, designed to be efficient. But the older kind, lighter in its rhythms, interrupted and resumed, one part of the sleeper always in some relationship with the world outside the body. The sounds reach you and are processed, and if they are ordinary, you don't wake. If they are not, you would. Tonight they are ordinary. The insects. the wind, when it comes, low and moving through the trees. The small sounds of the other people sleeping nearby. The particular chorus of their breathing, which is in some ways the most reassuring sound you could hear in the dark. You sleep. Deeper, the thoughts that are not thoughts have stopped. Even the residue of the day has gone quiet. There is nothing in particular happening. Just the large, warm, dark fact of sleep, which takes up no space and no time, which simply is. Outside, the night continues. Inside, the coals hold their warmth. At some point, the quality of the dark changes. Not lightness yet, but the beginning of the change toward it. A slight thinning in the blackness at the entrance. The air holds a different quality cooler, and with the particular freshness that comes in the hour before dawn when the night has reached its deepest point and is beginning slowly to turn. You are at the surface again briefly. Not awake, but aware in the way sleepers sometimes are that something is shifting. The body knows the approach of light before the eyes confirm it. There is a slight stirring in you, not urgent, not yet, but present, a beginning of the end of sleep, but not yet. The dark is still mostly dark, the warmth is still present. The sounds are still night sounds. You settle back, and the next layer of sleep takes you. You will not remember this moment in the morning, not its details, not the specific quality of almost waking in the last deep dark of the night. But in some less specific way, the body keeps a record of it, of the night as a whole, of the movement through its hours, of the resting and the half-waking and the resting again. Early humans slept in patterns that research suggests were polyphasic, not one long consolidated stretch, but multiple periods of lighter and deeper sleep across the night. Waking briefly between cycles was normal, not a sign of difficulty. The body's relationship to sleep was more in tune with the rhythms of the dark, with the sounds of the environment, with the light of the moon when it was present. This is how you sleep. It is simply how sleep is, and it holds you. The second morning of being in this place, not tomorrow morning, but some morning, some returning, begins the same way. The hard ground, the first awareness, the fire sounds, the particular smell of this space at this hour cooler and more distinct than at any other time of day. The night air still present, the daytime warmth not yet built. You lie for a moment without moving. There is always this pause, the in-between moment of morning, when you are awake but not yet up, when you are here but not yet in the day. The body takes stock, legs rested, shoulders easier. The small ache of the ground is familiar and does not alarm you. It is simply the price of sleeping on ground, which is what ground is for. Outside, a bird. The first bird. Its call drops into the pre-dawn quiet and seems to occupy more space than it should, the way the first sound of morning always does. Then another. Then, by degrees, the world begins its gradual increase in sound and light, and the day starts its business of becoming itself. You get up, not all at once. First you sit. Then, using your hands against the ground, you push up to standing. Your back makes the small complaint it often makes in the morning, something between a feeling and a sound. You give it a moment to settle. The fire. You go to it first. The coals are there, as you knew they would be, under a soft layer of ash that has fallen in the night. You clear the ash from around them carefully, exposing the orange glow beneath. There is still life here. You feed it in the careful way, small pieces first, thin and dry, held close where the coals are hottest, held without blocking the air. The fire remembers what it is supposed to do. Thin smoke rises. Then a small flame. Then more. By the time others begin to stir, the fire is back. Morning in this place has its own character, different from the evening, which builds toward warmth and rest. Morning builds toward going out. The day assembles itself in the sounds and movements of people getting up, of the fire being tended, of the first tasks of a new day being begun. There is a different quality of purpose in it, not urgency, but a kind of gathering. People and attention beginning to collect themselves. You eat something, what is left from the previous day, some roots, something dried. Morning eating is less ritual than evening eating, more practical. The body needs to be fed before it can do what will be asked of it. The light at the entrance changes as the sun rises. First it is pale and directionless. Then it finds the angle that puts it directly in through the opening, a shaft of warmer light crossing the ground of the shelter. This always happens at the same angle, at the same time of the morning, depending on the season. You know when it comes without looking at the entrance, because it has been coming through this opening at this angle on clear mornings for as long as you have been here. The seasons shift the angle slightly. You know that too. Research suggests that early humans had a profound practical knowledge of solar cycles, seasons, and environmental patterns, knowledge acquired not through any formal system, but through observation accumulated over years and generations. The angle of the sun, the behavior of animals, the patterns of weather, the timing of plant cycles, all of these were understood in the deep, embodied way of people who depended on them. You do not think of it as knowledge, it is just the way the world is. The light is in its morning position, which means it is this time of the morning, which means the day is at this particular point. Which means if you want to do a particular thing today, you should begin roughly now. You begin. Not always the same thing, not always the same place. This is the other side of home, the going out from it. There are days when you spend most of the day nearby, working close to the shelter, doing what needs doing within a small radius. Preparing things, repairing things, tending to people or to the fire or to the food stores. These days are quiet and mostly interior, and the shelter feels very present around all of it. And there are days when you go further, when the territory requires you for food, for materials, for the particular kind of presence in the landscape that keeps you oriented to it and it to you. On those days you leave the shelter behind, and as you move away from it, through the familiar ground, toward the edges of what you know, something in you remains oriented to it the way a needle points north. You are never entirely away from it. Some part of you knows its direction, its smell, the arrangement of its interior, the faces of the people in it. This is one of the things home does. It remains with you when you leave it. It is the fixed point that makes the rest of the landscape navigable. Home and away define each other. You can only truly be away from somewhere, because you are also always, in some sense, returning to it. Coming back from a long day, late afternoon again. The clearing. The smoke. The recognition. Every return has this quality, the moment of seeing the shelter from a distance and feeling the slight release of it. Not dramatic, not joyful, just there it is still. The shelter doesn't change. That is, in part, the point of it. The world outside is full of variation, full of weather and animals and landscape that shifts with the seasons and the hours. Inside the shelter things are mostly where you left them. The fire is in its place. The sleeping areas are in their place. The working area near the entrance is as it was. This constancy is something you register every time, on some level, though you would not have a word for what you are registering. The absence of surprise, perhaps, the comfort of things being as expected. You spend so much time reading the world for information, watching, listening, checking, that the experience of arriving somewhere where checking is mostly unnecessary is itself a kind of rest. Today you bring something back with you. A particular stone, found at some distance, carried in your hand for part of the afternoon. It is the right kind of stone for the work that needs doing, the right hardness, the right shape at one edge. You recognized it when you found it and you carried it back. An investment of effort. You set it inside near the other tools. It will be useful. This is how the space accumulates, not through design, but through the accumulation of useful things brought back by people who are paying attention to what is needed. The shelter does not stay the same from month to month, from season to season. It grows, adjusts, changes in the way that anything changes that people care for. Small improvements, small additions, things worn out and replaced, things added that weren't there before. Over a long enough time, the shelter holds the history of everyone who has lived here, not in any record, but in the physical fact of its construction, its materials, its objects. In the marks on the wall, in the worn paths around it. Evening again. The pattern repeats because patterns are the nature of this life, of most lives, of lives that are organized around the needs of the body and the rhythms of the world. The sun sets, the fire is fed, food is prepared and eaten, the warmth gathers, the people draw together. This particular evening is neither better nor worse than others. No one is sick tonight. The food is sufficient. The fire is good. The weather outside, as far as you can tell, is doing nothing threatening. It is simply an ordinary evening in a shelter, with ordinary people, in the ordinary way of evenings. It is everything. There is a word that doesn't exist yet, in the language of this time, for what a home is. But the experience exists. The feeling exists. It is written into the body, into the slow relaxation that happens in this particular space, into the way the senses ease their vigilance here in a way they don't elsewhere. You are recognizably more yourself in this place than anywhere else. There is a version of you that moves through the wider landscape alert, careful, oriented, and there is a version that exists only inside this shelter, loose and unhurried and known. The gap between those two versions is real, and the crossing between them, the moment of return, is one of the most consistently good feelings a life can hold. Not the best feeling, necessarily, not the most dramatic or the most memorable, but reliable, repeatable, present on any day you return. This is perhaps what makes home different from every other good thing. Other good things are occasional. The exceptional hunt, the warm day after a long cold spell, the days when everything required is simply available. Those things come and go and are treasured partly because they are not predictable. Home, when it is working as it should, is predictable. That predictability is not a lesser thing. It is the whole thing. A night of rain. You heard it coming, you usually do, and before it arrived, you brought inside the things that needed to stay dry, secured the entrance as well as it can be secured, added enough wood to the fire that it will outlast any dampness that finds its way in. Rain on the roof of the shelter has its own sound, different from rain on open ground. Muffled and close, a soft continuous percussion on the bark and branches above you. Sometimes it finds a gap and a thin thread of water drips to the floor, well away from the sleeping area. You know where the gaps are and work around them. You are warm inside. The rain is outside. This is the simplest possible version of the experience of home. Bad weather on the far side of a wall. The awareness of what is beyond the shelter, making the shelter feel more specific, more present, more genuinely yours. You lie and listen to it. There is something pleasurable about this, a particular pleasure that requires the discomfort outside to be real. The rain is real. The cold is real. And the warmth in here is therefore more real, and the being together is more real. And the fire is more real. You could not arrange this. You cannot make bad weather exist so that shelter will feel better. It simply happens, the same way everything happens, and you meet it as you meet everything by being in it, and attending to it, and letting it be what it is. The rain continues for much of the night. In the morning it has stopped, but everything outside is wet and heavy with it, the ground dark, the leaves silver gray and dripping, the air softer and more humid than usual. You step out briefly in the early light and the wet ground gives slightly underfoot, different from its normal firmness. You check the shelter from outside. The roof held where it needed to hold. One section near the back needs attention. You can see where the water found its way through and left a damp trace on the earth below it. A small repair, not difficult, to be done when the weather allows. You note it and go back inside. The fire needs building up from the coals, which held through the night better than you expected. This particular batch of wood was drier than usual, which made the difference. there is always maintenance. Home is not something you arrive at and then have, it is something you keep arriving at. Something you keep doing. The ongoing care of the space, the repairing, the cleaning, the restocking, the small adjustments to the sleeping area and the working area and the fire is not separate from home. It is part of what home is. The care of it. The attention given to it. Across a long season, you spend more hours in the tending of this space than in any other single activity. And the tending is not all effortful or purposeful. Some of it is simply the automatic maintenance of a person living in a space they care about, moving a thing that is in the wrong place back to the right place without even thinking about it. Picking up something that should not be on the ground, smoothing a piece of hide that has become bunched. These acts are invisible in their smallness, but cumulatively they are the whole project. The middle of a day when you stayed close to home, the light is at its highest and flattest, the time of day when there is no drama in the light at all. Just clear, even, undirected brightness. The landscape outside is at its most ordinary, the shelter at its most domestic. You are working with something near the entrance, where the light is best. The work requires close attention, and your hands know what they're doing, so your mind can be partly elsewhere, or perhaps mostly nowhere. One of those states of absorbed doing where thoughts are present but peripheral, not organized into anything, just background texture. The sounds from inside the shelter are the sounds of other people doing similar things. There is something deeply comfortable about this, the sound of shared industry, of everyone occupied with what they're occupied with, present in the same space without any particular need to be in conversation. Over time, early humans may have developed increasingly sophisticated division of labor, with different members of a group specializing in particular skills, returning to the group with different things, contributing different knowledge. Whether or not this emerged in formal ways, the basic practice of sharing a home and sharing its burdens seems to be among the oldest of human behaviors. Your hands work. The afternoon light shifts almost imperceptibly toward something warmer. There's a particular hour of the day that is simply good. Not every day, not in every season, but often enough that you would recognize it. The hour in the late afternoon when the work is mostly done and the evening has not yet fully started. The hour when the fire has been fed but is not yet the center of the evening. When people are around and comfortable and not urgently engaged with anything. This is the hour of sitting, of watching but not for any particular purpose, of the presence of other people in a quiet way, bodies in proximity, warmth from the fire or from the lowering sun, no urgency pressing. The equivalent of the evening's ease, but with the day still faintly present. The light still warm and directional, the world still fully visible. You sit outside the entrance on these days when the weather allows. The flat stone near the entrance is a good sitting stone, worn by use into a shape that accepts a human weight reasonably well. You sit and you look at the clearing and at the trees beyond it and at whatever is moving in or around them, not vigilantly, just looking. The clearing is its own kind of home, not the shelter, not the enclosed interior, but the space immediately outside the shelter, the particular clearing that this shelter sits within, the paths that lead from it, the nearby stream, the particular tree just at the edge of the clearing that you notice almost every time you come and go. These form a kind of extension of home, a zone of familiarity that radiates out from the shelter in decreasing degrees. At the center, the shelter itself, then the clearing completely familiar, then the paths through the nearby forest well known, then the wider territory known but less intimate, then the edges where you go rarely and return from with careful attention. You live at the center of concentric circles of familiarity. Most of your life is spent in the inner ones. This is not a limitation. It is the nature of deep knowledge. You know the inner circles the way you know your own hands in the dark without needing to look. That kind of knowledge is worth something. It is worth the narrowness it requires. Another evening. The sequence of arrivals, the fire, the food, the settling. Tonight there's more sound than usual, more people back, more activity, a greater hum of the shared space in use. It feels different, not better or worse, just more. More warmth, more movement, more of the particular small satisfactions of a well-occupied home. You find a spot slightly to the side of the main activity and observe. Not because you are unhappy, just because sometimes the side is where you want to be. You can see everyone from here. The fire, central and bright. The people around it, in various states of engagement and rest. Someone tending food. Someone working on something with their hands. Someone lying already, eyes open, watching the ceiling. You have a clear view of the entrance from here. The sky beyond it is the particular orange-violet of a clear evening, and the first stars are visible in the upper corner of that rectangle of sky. You look at the stars for a moment. Not for any reason, they are just there. Sleep comes differently on busy evenings. Not worse, just differently paced. The activity winds down in its own time, without instruction. One person lies down. Then another. The conversations, such as they are, taper. The fire continues to be tended by the last one still awake, and then that person, too, finds their place on their hide, and the night takes over. You have been lying down for some time already. You were not the first to sleep, but you were not the last to stop being awake. Somewhere in between, at the moment that felt right. You lay down and let the evening continue around you at a remove. The hum of it was not unpleasant. In fact, there is a particular pleasure in being already half asleep while others are still quietly present. The warmth and the sounds and the movement, muted by the approaching sleep, become a kind of comfort. The sense of being held in something larger, a group, a space, a warmth that is collective and not just your own. You sleep. The night does its work around you. There is a season that is harder than others. Not every season is equal, and the one that requires the most from this shelter is the cold one, when the world outside reduces itself to a kind of severity. When the trees have given up their leaves and the ground is hard and the light comes at a low angle and does not last long. When going out requires more from you and gives back less, and when the warmth inside becomes not just comfort but survival. The shelter changes in this season, or rather the relationship with it changes. It becomes more necessary, more present in the day's calculations. The fire is never entirely left, and the wood supply becomes a thing of real concern. And the sleeping arrangement tightens toward the center where the heat is best. In this season, the home is most itself, because it is most needed. And the return to it at the end of a cold day, with the warmth waiting inside this, is the most acute version of the feeling you have known many times in milder weather. The body practically pulls toward it. The relief of crossing the threshold is not subtle. You have learned something across the seasons here. Not in the way of a lesson that was taught. In the way of something that accumulates, that becomes part of you through repetition. That there are things that can be done to improve the shelter against the cold. That there are ways of storing food and managing the fire and arranging the sleeping space that are better and worse, and that the better ways are arrived at through paying attention across enough seasons that the patterns become legible. This is perhaps the earliest form of expertise, not abstract knowledge. Not something transmitted in language, but the accumulated understanding of a particular person about a particular place. No one else knows this shelter the way you know it. No one else has been in it through every season as you have, has repaired it in the same places, has noticed the same things. This knowledge is yours. And it is also the shelter's in some sense. You carry each other. An afternoon of work near the back of the shelter. Not glamorous work. Fixing something in the wall where the material had loosened, packing it back, making it stable again. The kind of work that no one will particularly notice when it is done, but that matters, that will keep the wall holding. That will mean the cold air finds less purchase next season. You do this work by yourself, in the particular quiet of the middle of the day. Your hands are occupied and your mind is loosely present. The sounds of the shelter around you, faint and familiar. The smell of the earth you are working with, damp and old. This is a kind of home in miniature, the quiet tending of a space, because it matters, because it is yours, because the care of it is continuous and ordinary and worth doing. Not every act of home is warmth and firelight and shared meals. Some of it is this, the unglamorous maintenance, the invisible work, the repair done in the middle of a gray afternoon with no one watching. Later, the same afternoon, you wash your hands in the water from the container near the fire. The water is warm, which is good. You look at your hands for a moment, the dirt in the creases, the roughness of the skin, the small cuts and calluses that have accumulated over the seasons. These are working hands. They show what they do. You dry them on your clothing and move back toward the fire. The shelter is quiet in the way it gets in the middle of the day. A few people, some in, some out. Activity, but not busy activity. The fire low and steady. The smell of wood and smoke and warmth. You sit beside the fire and do nothing for a few minutes. Just that. It is allowed here to do nothing. Or rather, doing nothing is not a failure or a waste. The body needs rest within the day as well as at the end of it. This is not something anyone has to argue. It is simply known, in the way practical things are known. You have seen what happens when people push themselves past their limit, when rest is not taken and the body is asked to keep going past what it can sustain. The results are not good. So you sit. The fire does its thing. The afternoon light moves on the wall opposite you. Something outside moves through the clearing, a bird, by the sound, and then the sound is gone. You breathe, not performing breathing, just doing it the way bodies do it without particular attention. The breath comes in and goes out, and neither act requires anything from you. You are warm. You are not hungry. The work is done for now. This is enough. More than enough. Dusk again. The pattern holds. There is something deeply right about the repeatability of this. Each day is not the same, the activities are different, the weather is different, the particular quality of the morning and afternoon and evening is never quite identical to any other. But the shape of the day, the rhythm of it, is recognizable. The shelter is the anchor around which this rhythm is organized. You go out and come back. The fire goes low and is built up. People leave and return. The food is prepared and eaten. The night comes. Sleep. Not every day is good, by any measure. There are days when things go wrong, when the hunt returns with nothing, when the weather is punishing, when someone is not well. The repetition is not a promise of ease. It is more like a framework that holds whether the content of the day is good or bad. Home is still home on the bad days. This, in fact, may be what matters most about it. You are beginning to drift again. Evening, full now. Fire bright and sufficient. Others around you, settled and warm. Something you've been holding in your hands, a piece of material you were working with. Some small task of the evening you set down without ceremony. Your hands are done with it. You look at the fire. The fire looks back in its way, which is not a looking at all but a burning, a going, a constant minor catastrophe of wood becoming heat, becoming light. It does not look back. But it is present, and you are present, and the looking is pleasant. Your eyes are heavy. Not suddenly, heaviness comes gradually, in degrees. First a slight weight at the lid, then a warmth behind the eyes. Then the effort of keeping them open becomes something you're aware of, which means you've already begun to lose the automatic contract with wakefulness. You could stay up. There is no urgency in either direction. No one is telling you to sleep. No one is keeping you awake. It simply becomes, at some point, easier to lie down than to continue sitting. You lie down. The hide is warm from the time you've been sitting nearby. The ground is the same ground. The sounds are the same sounds. You close your eyes. The fire. The breathing. The night, doing what it does, on the far side of the bark and earth above you. You feel the shape of this place, even with your eyes closed. The ceiling above you, which you could not see anyway, but which you know. The walls to either side. The entrance behind you, closed as it is with hides in the cold months, or open in the warm ones. The fire to your left. The people to your right. You know this space in the dark the way you know it in the light. Better, perhaps, when you cannot see it, you feel it instead the warmth from specific directions, the sounds from specific places, the temperature where the entrance is versus the temperature where the back wall is. You are oriented. In the most complete sense of the word, you know where you are. This is what home gives you. Among everything else, among the warmth and the safety and the familiarity and the people, orientation. The deep, physical certainty of knowing exactly where you are. People who live without a fixed home know what it is to lack this. The exhaustion of never being in a place where the body can fully let go, where the vigilance can lower, where the listening can ease. The constant minor expenditure of attention that comes with being somewhere you don't fully know, somewhere that hasn't had time to become yours. This shelter has had time. And so you let go, slowly. The thoughts are barely thoughts now. There is something like an image, brief and impressionistic, the clearing in the morning light, the way the ground looks after rain and then it disperses. There is something like a sound heard from inside the approach of sleep, one of the people nearby shifting, settling, and then it is absorbed. There is the fire. You don't need to look at it. You feel it. Deeper, the shelter holds you. The night holds the shelter. The land holds the night. This is where the oldest sleep is. Not in comfort, exactly, not in perfect softness or silence or perfect warmth, but in belonging. In the particular quality of rest that comes when you are exactly where you should be, in a place that is yours and that you are part of, with people nearby who are part of the same belonging. You are warm. You are home. There is nothing else that needs to be said, or thought, or done. The fire holds. You hold. Sleep holds everything. The night is quiet. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of presence of everything present and still and at rest. The coals in the fire, still warm. The bodies in the shelter, still the land outside, still carrying all its sound and motion, but carrying it softly now. The way the world moves after dark, which is not like the way it moves in daylight. You are somewhere in the depths of it, not lost. Held, the shelter does not sleep. The shelter simply is. The way places are containing and surrounding and unchanging in the moments when everyone in it is somewhere else entirely, somewhere beyond its walls in the interior spaces of sleep. But you will be here when you surface. And in the morning, the fire. And the light at the same angle through the entrance. And the familiar smell of this air. And the path down to the water, and the people, and the day. All of it waiting, all of it yours. Sleep now. The rest can wait. It will all be here. Still, warm home, there is another kind of morning. Not the one that begins with urgency, with the sense of things that need doing pressing in before you are fully awake. the other kind. The kind where you surface slowly and the world comes back gently. And for a long time there is nothing required of you except to be in it. You wake on this kind of morning to the sound of rain that has already been falling for some time, which means it was falling while you slept and you simply didn't know it. The shelter is quieter than it would be on a clear morning, the usual outside sounds muffled by the rain, the air inside holding a different quality. Heavier, softer, the fire is low but alive. Someone you are not sure who has already seen to the wood. You lie there. The entrance is screened against the rain. You can hear it on the other side steady, not heavy, the kind of rain that has settled in for the day rather than the kind that means business, that crashes through the trees and overwhelms. This is ordinary rain. The landscape is accepting it without drama, drinking it in. You have nowhere particular to be. This is not always the case. Most mornings you have somewhere to be, something the day requires. But sometimes the weather makes the decision for you, and the decision is stay. Tend, rest, do the indoor things. You fold into the morning on your side, watching the fire through half-open eyes, and make no effort to get up. The fire is talking to itself again. Low and steady, just the sound of it working through the wood. You have been listening to this sound your entire life, and there is probably nothing in the world you know more intimately. Not by thought, but by accumulated presence. The particular frequency of a fire at this size and this heat. The way it pauses sometimes seems to hesitate, and then resumes. The occasional small collapse of a piece of wood settling into coals. It is not silence, but it is close to it, in the way that a sound you have heard so many times it no longer requires attention can feel like silence. Background. The auditory equivalent of the color of a room you live in which you stopped seeing years ago. But today you hear it. Maybe because of the rain. Maybe because of the particular quality of this morning's light, which is gray and still and undirected, the kind that flattens everything slightly and slows the day down before it begins. Maybe just because sometimes you hear things again that you have been not hearing for a while. The fire is good. It has always been good. Someone is awake beside you. Not visible, but you can tell by the change in their breathing the slight return of consciousness that changes the rhythm of sleep to the rhythm of a person who is awake but not yet moving. This happens sometimes, where two people surface into awareness around the same time without either having done anything to cause it. You lie in that shared stillness for a while. There is no pressure here, no explanation necessary. Just two people awake on a rainy morning, still lying in the sleeping area, listening to the fire and the rain. It is a good feeling, not a named or dramatic feeling, just the ordinary warmth of being in a familiar space with a familiar person, both of you doing nothing in particular. The rain continues. You get up eventually, not because you have to, but because your body has rested enough and begins to signal interest in something else: water, food, movement, the small signals of the body reasserting itself after sleep. The fire needs wood. You add some. You drink from the container that still holds yesterday's water, which has cooled overnight. The coldness of it surprises you slightly, in a good the way cold water can when you are warm from sleep and the body receives it as a sharp, clean fact. You look around the interior of the shelter, not assessing, not checking, just looking. The familiar disorder of a lived space, the things that have ended up not quite where they belong, the sleeping hides that have shifted in the night, the general state of a space where people live and breathe and work and move. It is your disorder. You know where everything is within it. A day of staying in. You work on something that has needed attention for a while, a piece of hide that has been waiting for the right time. Not urgent enough to do on a busier day, but too useful to leave indefinitely. The work is straightforward once you begin it, the kind of work your hands do largely on their own once they know what is required, freeing most of your attention to simply exist in the space. The shelter has a different quality today. In the light of a rainy day, with no one going out, with the sound of rain on the roof and the fire steady and the space full of quiet industry. It feels very specifically itself, very particular. This shelter, this rain, these people, this fire. Not any shelter, not any fire. There are days when you are more aware of this than others, the particular this-ness of the place. Something about the confinement of weather and the slowing of the day makes the space more legible, more present. You notice the marks on the wall again. The old ones you noticed before, the lines made by someone before your time. Today, in the gray light, they look different, deeper somehow, more clearly intentional. Not random. Someone made them because they wanted to, because making them meant something, because the wall was here and the hand was here and the moment asked for it. You don't know what they meant. You don't need to. Late in the afternoon of that same day, the rain lightens. Not stops entirely, it continues for some hours, but eases into something more like a mist, a soft gray presence rather than an active falling. The entrance feels passable again. You step just outside it and look at the clearing. Everything is wet and green and dim. The clearing holds a low, close silence. The trees beyond are dark with moisture. There are small rivers forming at the low points in the ground, shallow channels carrying rainwater toward the edge of the clearing. You stand in the entrance and look for a while, not for any reason, just looking at the changed face of the familiar place. Rain does something to known landscapes, makes them temporarily strange, like seeing a familiar person in different clothes. The shapes are the same, but the light is different, and the texture is different, and everything seems closer and more distinct. The stream will be higher. You note this without urgency. It matters, but not today. You go back inside. Evening comes earlier on days like this, or rather, the light is already low enough that the transition to evening is subtle, a further slight dimming rather than a definite change. The fire becomes more important earlier. You feed it up, and the warmth builds again, and the shelter's interior becomes its warm, amber, enclosed self, while outside the world stays gray and damp. You eat. The others eat. The food is ordinary and sufficient. Then sitting, as always, in the evening of the shelter, in the firelight. One of the things you've learned about this space across the seasons is that it works. That isn't nothing. There are shelters that don't, that leak persistently in the wrong places, that hold cold in the wrong spots, that are wrong in ways you can't always name but your body knows. This one works. Warm where it needs to be. Dry where it needs to be. Large enough, but not too large. You didn't build it. Or rather, you have contributed to it, repaired it, modified it in small ways, but you inherited the basic shape of it from the people who came before and found the same things to be true about this place that you now find. A good location. A good rock face providing the back wall. A good clearing with a good view of approaches. The people who first chose this place knew what they were looking for. Something about that sits with you tonight. The continuity. The idea, not quite an idea, more of a feeling that you are part of something ongoing, that the shelter has held people before you and will hold people after you, and that your time in it is one layer in something larger. The marks on the wall are evidence of this. The worn paths are evidence. The places in the ground that have been cleared and used and cleared and used until they are simply part of the landscape of the shelter. You are borrowing this place from a long succession and passing it on to what comes after. Not in a heavy way. Not a thought you carry with any particular weight tonight. Just present, registered, then gone, as these things go, into the ordinary evening. Later, the fire is at its usual evening level now, and people are in their various arrangements around the sleeping area and near the fire. The hum of the shared space, which is never exactly the same on any two nights, settles into something comfortable. The cold outside is keeping to itself tonight. The rain has held it from becoming too severe, and the shelter is warm enough. You have been lying down for a while. Not asleep yet, but not fighting it either. Just letting the evening continue in the way it continues, at its own pace, at the edge of your awareness. The sounds are good tonight. All of them. The fire, the breathing, the settling of the shelter against the small movements of people and weather. Outside, the rain now very gentle, the softest kind, almost just the sound of air moving. The darkness outside the entrance is complete and settled and ordinary. There is a particular way the body gives itself over to a place where it has slept many times. Different from sleeping somewhere new, where some portion of the body stays alert, keeps watch, maintains a low-level readiness that sleep doesn't quite extinguish. Here, after so many nights in this space, with these sounds and this smell and this fire, the body knows that nothing here requires watching, knows that the night sounds are known, and the enclosure is familiar, and the people are the right people. The release is complete. Or near enough. The difference between near complete and complete release is one of the things that separates a home from a shelter. A shelter gives you the near complete, Home gives you the rest. You are going now, not anywhere, into sleep. The familiar progress of it, the slow deepening, the receding of the world into something softer and more distant. The thoughts becoming less thought-like and more image-like, and then less than that, just texture, just warmth, just the sense of being in a place that is yours and contains you. The fire holds. Outside, the mist. Inside, you. And the others. And the warmth. And everything arranged as it should be. There is a morning in a later season when you wake very early. Before the birds even, which is early. The sky at the entrance is not dark, but not light either, that threshold quality, neither. The air is cold, sharper than you expected. The fire has burned very low in the night, not out, but close to it. And you lie and feel the absence of its usual warmth, and know without deciding that you will get up and tend it. You do. The cold of the shelter at this hour, when the fire has gone low, is different from outside cold. It is the cold of a space that has been holding warmth and let it diminish, a particular held cold that is also familiar, that you know the feel of and know how to address. You rebuild the fire from the coals. They are still there, as they always are, the deep persistence of them under the ash. You work slowly in the pre-dawn quiet, not wanting to wake anyone, feeding the fire with careful small pieces until it finds its confidence again, until you can feel the heat beginning to rebuild against your face and hands. Then you sit. In the first warmth of the rebuilt fire, in the last dark before dawn, in the very still particular quiet of this hour, you sit. This hour belongs to no one else. The others are asleep. The day has not started. The night has finished its work. You are in between things, sitting with the fire you have just rebuilt, watching the coals become flames again. Outside, the first bird. Always the same first bird, or the same kind, the one that goes earliest and loudest in the time before the chorus. Its call drops through the air and is absorbed by the trees, and then the air closes behind it. Then quiet. Then another. You sit and the light increases almost invisibly, the way things change when you are watching them too closely to see the change. And then at some point you realize the entrance is more visible than it was, and the interior of the shelter is more visible, and the fire is less the only source of light, and the morning has begun. This is the moment. The crossing of the threshold. Night into day. Sleep into waking, inside into the beginning of out. You are in this moment, in this shelter, in this particular cold and quiet and first light. You are home. The others wake in their own time. First one, then another, the morning assembling itself in the people who inhabit it, the shelter coming back to life person by person. The sounds change the sounds of people getting up, of the fire being given more attention, of the first small tasks of the day being started. The day distributes itself. You have been in it already for a while. The early hour was yours in a way the full morning won't be. That is all right. You carry it with you into the busier hours, the having been there, the having sat with the fire in the last dark. It is enough. more than enough. Sometime in the warmest season, you spend a night outside. Not often. Mostly the shelter is where sleep happens, where it makes sense. But sometimes, when the night is the right kind of night still and warm and bright with the moon, and the air doing nothing threatening, you take your sleeping hide and carry it a short distance from the entrance and lie in the clearing. The sky is immense on these nights. You know this. You always know this when you look up at it. The sky at night in the open is a different thing from the sky at night through the entrance or the smoke hole. It is the whole thing. The full width of it, edge to edge, dark and present and filled with light that is so distant it has become stillness. You lie and look at it. The sounds of the shelter reach you, still the low fire. The occasional sound of the person sleeping inside and in the other direction. The sounds of the landscape, the insects and the air, and the small movements of things living their night lives. You are between two worlds. The shelter behind you, the open above you. Both are home. In their way, or rather, home is the one that pulls you back in the morning, and this is the outside of it, the edge of it, the place where you go when you need a different version of the same belonging. The moon is up. It is very bright. Your shadow falls across the pale grass beside you. You breathe. Then sleep comes out here too, on the ground under the open sky, which is another kind of belonging. An older one, even, before there were shelters at all, before people knew to build them or find them, when the sky was the only ceiling and sleep was something you did in the open world. That older self, that older way, lives in the body still. Sometimes, on the right night, you find it, and you come inside in the morning, back through the entrance, back to the smell of smoke and earth and familiar warmth, back to the low sound of the fire, back to the others. The return from a night outside has a particular quality to it. You notice the shelter more after a night in the open, its smallness, its darkness by comparison, its warmth. You feel all of these more sharply than usual. You take your place by the fire. You are back. The seasons will turn again. They always turn. That is the nature of them, their whole character, the turning, the return, the progression through cold and warm and dry and wet and back again, round and again, round and again. You have watched this happen many times. You know the markers of each shift, the angle of the light, the behavior of particular animals, the state of particular plants, the temperature of the water in the stream. Each turn of the season changes the relationship with the shelter. In the warm season, it is optional. In some ways, you could sleep outside, you could stay away longer, the food situation is easier and the fire less critical. In the cold season, it is everything. In between, all gradations. But across all of them, the shelter is there. Fixed, the land around it changes. The trees change. The weather changes. The light changes. The animals pass through in their patterns, present and absent and present again. The people who share the shelter come and go, sometimes away for days or weeks, sometimes new people arriving, sometimes people who were here before returning. The shelter holds all of it. There's probably nothing in your experience that is more yours than this place. Not in the sense of possession. You own it the way you own the air, the way you own the stream, which is to say, not at all and completely. It is yours through use, through presence, through the accumulation of time spent here, through knowing it. The marks on the wall are yours too, in a way, not because you made them, but because you have looked at them in many lights, on many mornings and evenings, and they are part of what this place is, and this place is part of what you are. This is home, the whole thing. The shelter, and the clearing, and the fire, and the people, and the seasons cycling through. The smell in the morning, and the light in the afternoon, and the sounds of the night. The work done here, and the rest taken here, and the returns to it, over and over, each one beginning with a moment of recognition in the chest before you've even looked around. It is almost sleep time now. You can feel it in the weight of the evening, the way the fire has settled, the way the people around you have settled. The sounds are slower and quieter than they were an hour ago. The quality of the silence between sounds is longer. You are lying on your side, facing the fire, the warmth on your face regular and present. Someone across the fire has already closed their eyes. You will too. But first, just this. The feeling of the hide beneath you, familiar as your own skin. The sound of the fire, which you know so well it is almost silence. The warmth from it on the side of your face. The smell of this air, which is the smell of this particular home and nowhere else on the earth. The dark above you, patterned with fire. The people around you, breathing in their various rhythms, settling into the common warmth of shared sleep. Outside, the night, doing its patient work. Inside, this. You are home. There is no better word for it. There is no more complete state to be in. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. You are warm. You are held. The shelter holds. The night holds. The seasons hold. And all of it, the days and the returns and the fire and the clearing and the marks on the wall and the people and the work and the rest and the smell and the light, all of it is home. You don't need to understand it. You just need to be here. And you are. Sleep quietly in the warmth, in the shelter, in the old, patient, particular belonging of a place that knows you. Sleep, the fire will hold. The morning will come. And you will still be here. Still home, still warm, still resting. Good night. There are things you carry from this place even when you are not in it. Not objects. Not the tools or the materials, though you carry those sometimes. Something less tangible. The knowledge of its shape. The particular way the air feels inside it. The angle of the fire in the evening. The sound of the entrance when the wind comes from a certain direction. You carry these things in your body the way the body carries everything it has repeatedly experienced, not as memory you can examine, but as readiness, as calibration. You are calibrated to this place. Your body knows how to be in it, what to expect from it, how to move through it in the dark. how to feel its temperature against your skin and know what it means. This calibration is very old, older than this particular shelter, older than any specific home. It is something the human body learned to do across the long span of time before anything we would now recognize as civilization to attach, to belong, to orient itself to a particular place in a way that freed the rest of attention for other things. Being at home means not having to use your full attention to navigate. It means your nervous system can ease. Your senses can lower their vigilance from their highest setting to something more comfortable, something sustainable. You can be in this place and also be somewhere else in your mind, and the two don't conflict. This is the freedom that home gives, not the freedom from the world, the freedom to be slightly elsewhere within it. A morning near the end of the warm season. The air already has something different in it. A sharpness at the edges of the day, particularly in the morning, that wasn't there a month ago. The light has changed too, arriving at a slightly different angle, slightly more golden, the quality of it richer and also more fleeting. The warm time is beginning its slow withdrawal. You notice this the way you notice things that you have learned to track because they matter. The season turning is not a casual event. It requires attention, preparation, adjustment. The shelter will need things done to it before the cold becomes serious. The food stores need thinking about. The wood supply is a consideration. But this morning you don't think about any of that. This morning you just notice the air. Standing at the entrance of the shelter in the early light, looking at the clearing where the grass is still green but drier than it was, where the trees at the edge have the very first trace of change in some of their leaves, where the morning light falls at its autumn angle across the ground and makes it look different from itself. This is the changing of the familiar, the place you know becoming slightly different. Not threatening, you have seen this many times, you know what it leads to, you know what to do when it arrives. But present, worth noticing. You stand and notice it. Then go back inside. The fire is good this morning. You fed it well earlier, and it has found its proper rhythm. And the warmth it gives is the warmth of a fire that has been tended with understanding, that has been given what it needs in the right order, and now returns what it was given. You sit near it and drink warm water and feel the season in your body, the slight stiffness of cooler mornings, the way the joints know the cold is coming before the temperature confirms it. These are old signals, things the body reads almost before they happen, because it has read them enough times to anticipate. You will adjust, you have before. The shelter will hold you through another cold season as it has held others before you and will hold others after. This knowledge is comfortable. Not triumphant, just sturdy. Reliable like the coals in the morning, like the path from the stream. Like the smell of this air and the sound of this fire and the feeling of this ground. Everything you need is here. And you are here too. And that is enough. And that is home. Sleep now. Let all of it hold you. The fire is good. The night is quiet. You are warm. You are here. You are home.